Remember the sound, that well-known Nokia ringtone, and close your eyes. It was the soundtrack of first love, texts sent late at night, and friendships formed one message at a time for many. Nokia was more than just a phone. It was a friend and a part of our lives. Nokia was always in our pockets and in our minds, from snake fights in class to calls that changed everything. However, technology is not the beginning of this story. Nokia was born in a Finnish paper mill in 1865. Nokia reinvented itself repeatedly, from paper to rubber boots, rubber to cables, and finally, electronics. And when it entered the world of mobile phones, it didn't just sell devices. It provided people with moments they would never forget, connection, and a sense of belonging. Nokia became more than just a brand because of the deep connection people had with their phones. It became a part of life itself. However, the same process of reinventing itself that brought it to prominence would eventually result in its demise. By the end of the 1960s, Nokia had already undergone multiple self-reinventions, but the boldest transformation was yet to come. Leadership anticipated a world in which wires would no longer be necessary for communication. They staked their money on a future based on invisible airborne signals. Nokia made significant investments in telecommunications despite the hesitation of others, developing early network technology and laying the groundwork for mobile communication. The decision was not obvious. The use of mobile phones was rare, expensive, and bulky. However, Nokia's leaders were of the opinion that mobility would alter everything. They imagined a world in which phones were personal, portable, and indispensable, seeing beyond the limitations of the present. Nokia stood out from its rivals, who stuck with conventional landline systems thanks to this vision. Key executives encouraged Nokia to consider the long term. Building the networks that powered their devices was at the heart of their strategy, not just selling devices. The company's DNA became infused with innovation. Engineers were encouraged to try new things, question their beliefs, and test the limits. Nokia was shaping trends rather than just following them. Nokia saw the future first in a time when few believed mobile technology could succeed. A Finnish industrial company was transformed into a telecom giant thanks to this foresight. The world would soon realize how potent that vision could be. By the beginning of the 2000s, Nokia was more than just a business, it was the mobile phone industry as a whole. Nokia held more than 40% of the global market at its height. A Nokia phone was owned by over 1 billion people. The brand was everywhere, in bustling cities and remote villages alike. Millions of people in developing nations who had never owned a phone were connected thanks to Nokia, which became the entry point to communication. Then the legendary Nokia 3310 appeared. A phone that lasted so long that it became a cultural icon. Its battery seemed to never run out, and one charge could last for days. It was straightforward, dependable, and built to withstand almost anything. Your Nokia would remain functional despite being scratched, dropped, or even left in your pocket for weeks. Nokia stood for trust for everyday people. It was affordable, simple to use, and strong enough to deal with real-world situations. It was purchased for children by parents. It was carried across continents by travelers. It was used by farmers in the fields. Nokia was more than just a phone. For many, it was their first introduction to the digital age, and a companion, a lifeline. Nokia was more than just the standard during this golden era. It was also the symbol of mobile phones. Owning a Nokia signified global connectivity, and for a brief period, it appeared as though nothing could ever replace it. Nokia changed societies and didn't just sell phones. Nokia became the link to the modern world in emerging markets, where landlines were uncommon and prohibitively expensive. Its phones connected millions of people for the first time because they were affordable, durable, and simple to use. Buyers could contact farmers directly. It is possible to keep in touch with families that live far apart. Students could get information from places other than their villages. A revolution that reshaped daily life across continents was sparked by Nokia's devices, which transformed communication from a luxury into a necessity. Nokia was more than just a brand. It was a lifeline all over the world. It gave the unheard a voice, connected people who were alone, and underserved people an opportunity. Nokia was not only significant for a generation, but it was also the driving force behind the mobile revolution. The world was transforming. Consumers wanted more than just texts and calls at a time when smartphones were on the rise and the internet was exploding. They desired seamless web access, apps, and cameras. However, Nokia underestimated these developments. Nokia clung to its outdated systems in the belief that its dominance would last forever, while its rivals raced ahead with sleek designs and smarter software. Cracks were forming within the company. Through layers of bureaucracy, decisions were made slowly. Engineers had a hard time dealing with out-of-date software that couldn't keep up with new developments. Nokia lost its daring, agile, and responsiveness to the very market it had once defined due to organizational complexity. Ironically, Nokia was blinded by its success. The business that had reinvented itself so frequently failed to anticipate the subsequent transformation. It thought its crown was secure. However, the fall was closer than anyone had anticipated, and the initial warning signs had already surfaced. In 2007, Apple introduced a product that appeared to be more futuristic than a phone. The iPhone was a revolution, not just another competitor. Button use was replaced by a sleek touchscreen. Basic text services were replaced by a full internet browser. Phones became pocket computers thanks to apps. Customers fell in love with it, not just wanted it. Apple realized that people wanted power, elegance, and simplicity, all in one device. Experience was more important than hardware when it came to the iPhone. It felt intuitive, exciting, and natural to swipe, tap, and browse. Nokia's sturdy design suddenly appeared dated, and its software seemed out of date. The second wave, Android, followed. Android, in contrast to Apple's closed system, quickly spread to dozens of manufacturers. The ecosystem exploded, with devices ranging from budget phones to premium ones. Millions of consumers had access to smartphones that were faster, smarter, and more connected than anything Nokia offered within a few short years. Nokia was up against two unstoppable forces rather than one rival. Android ensured that everyone could afford a phone, redefining what a phone could be. Nokia's empire was suddenly under siege as a result of the sudden shift in the mobile industry. The empire was breaking apart behind Nokia's walls. The debate over whether to adopt new platforms or safeguard existing ones resulted in strategy disagreements among executives. The process of making decisions took months or even years. Reluctance was fatal in a fast-paced industry. Nokia's leadership stumbled around in circles as competitors raced ahead. Symbian, the operating system that once powered millions of Nokia phones, was at the heart of the issue. However, by the late 2000s, it was cumbersome, out of date, and difficult to use for developers. There were a lot of complaints. Apps were hard to make, updates were slow, and the system wasn't as smooth as iOS or Android. Symbian was abandoned by developers, and customers followed. Consumers desired more, phones that felt contemporary, smoother interfaces, and better apps. Instead, they received outdated devices that were difficult to keep up with. The user experience was frustrating, and the app ecosystem was weak. In search of phones that could truly deliver the future, Nokia's devoted fans began to drift away. Success had made it hard to see. Although within the company, sluggish decisions and out-of-date software were eroding its foundation, Nokia believed its dominance was unshakable. The cracks could no longer be ignored as the world was shifting at a rate faster than Nokia could respond. By 2011, Nokia was in a pickle. The high-end market was dominated by Apple, Android was widely available, and Nokia's own software was failing. Nokia took the bold step of forming a partnership with Microsoft in a last-ditch effort to survive. The strategy was straightforward: use Windows Phone to rebuild the empire. It was a chance to start over and a rescue mission. However, the world had already progressed. Customers were devoted to Android and iPhone products. Apps for a system with few users were avoided by developers. Although the Windows Phone appeared to be new, it arrived too late. The market was racing ahead, no longer waiting for Nokia. Samsung emerged as a new global powerhouse. Android became unstoppable, and Apple continued to expand. Against giants who had mastered the smartphone era, Nokia was fighting for its existence. Its market share decreased further each month. Nokia's final bet was the partnership that was supposed to save the company. Not only was Nokia losing a market, but it was also losing time. The company that once set the standard for mobile communication was now having trouble remaining relevant. The world was already anticipating the next revolution after the last chance had passed. By 2013, the unavoidable took place. Nokia had lost ground in the market. It had once reigned supreme over mobile phones, but it was now a shadow of its former self. A sad end to an era that had defined global communication came when the company sold its phone division to Microsoft. The ringtone that had once reverberated across continents was now silent. However, Nokia did not vanish. A completely different story was taking place beneath the headlines. Building connections was the focus of the company's new direction. It reinvented itself as a market leader in network technology and infrastructure for telecommunications, supplying power to the invisible systems that keep the world connected. Nokia embraced the future rather than clinging to the past to avoid destruction. It proved that even giants can rise from their own ashes as a technology backbone after falling as a phone manufacturer. Numerous individuals believe Nokia vanished. It didn't, though. The company itself changed. The phones that once defined an era are no longer produced by Nokia. Instead, it powers global network connections. Nokia's technology is the foundation of global communication, from 4G to 5G, allowing for faster data, smarter cities, and seamless continent-to-continent connectivity. Advanced telecommunications equipment, cloud infrastructure, and network solutions that are utilized by governments, carriers, and businesses worldwide are among its current offerings. The invisible systems that keep billions of devices online every second are designed by Nokia engineers. The story of Nokia is not just about survival, rather, it is about evolution. It fell as a phone maker, but rose again as a technology pioneer. The networks that power our world now hold the name that once belonged in our hands. The story of Nokia is more than just about technology. In a world that never stops moving, it's about leadership, vision, and the cost of standing still. When you're at the top, it's easy to believe you'll stay there. However, success can blind even the most experienced leaders. Due to Nokia's dominance, it was slow to anticipate the next wave. Innovation doesn't sit around. From buttons to touchscreens, phones to ecosystems, the world changed. Nokia's pace couldn't match the speed of change. Someone else will start reinventing themselves as soon as you stop doing so. Nokia demonstrated to the world that leadership does not entail holding power. Rather, it entails repeatedly earning it. Nokia. Decisions determine a company's future. Nokia's internal conflicts and slow responses demonstrated that leadership requires courage to act as well as vision. Nokia fell. But it didn't vanish. It changed, rebuilt, and discovered a new purpose. That is the most important lesson. Failure is just the beginning of rebirth. In the end, Nokia's story reminds us that even giants need to keep moving because standing still is the fastest way to fall in business.